Well, good evening. Where I am, it is Christmas Eve. And I'm going to do a little bit of a topic that's off topic, but it's so prevalent that I just want to give my opinion. And more than give you my opinion, I want to give you the tools with which you can solve many criminal cases. And more importantly, I believe it helps with other things in life too. But for criminal cases, it's just an absolute wonder. You use this tool and it leads you right to who is guilty. So, or leads you to who is innocent, if that's what you're looking for. Hey, so I'm Glen. This is your podcast called The End of the World. I began this podcast in February of 2020 as a way to warn people that COVID was coming and that it was going to change our world forever in our lifetimes. I don't really know about forever because it's hard to figure out, sometimes is this different than what we would have had. But the point is, our world has never gotten back to where it was in January of 2020. We're not there. And we're not going to be there in our lifetimes, people. You're not ever going to see it go back to the way it was in 2019, where you didn't wear a mask. You just walked down the street and went into the store. And a lot of people are saying, well, wait a minute, well, there aren't a lot of people. This podcast isn't intended for a lot of people. Just the people I know who value my opinion and who are still impressed by the fact that in October of 2019, I sold my house and moved into a fortress in a guard-gated community because COVID was coming and because I also predicted and wanted to be safe of civil unrest January 6th. And I further predicted, and my real estate agent will confirm this, so I put down why I'm selling, that there was a war coming and that was going to change the way the world works for the foreseeable future. Let's get back to how does this relate to my magical tool and how does that relate to Moscow, Idaho? Okay, thank you for asking. Here we go. I have a tool that I use when I look at a factual situation. And the name of it probably isn't familiar to most people, but it's called Where's Waldo, which was a game of some sort. I never played it, and I don't play any games, at least board games. And certainly not role games. Oh, my God. Something is wrong with all of those people. And we're going to just look at how does Where's Waldo work and how do you apply it to a situation like a crime or more specifically to a crime like Moscow, Idaho. What we do is we get all of the facts we've got and we lay them out in front of us in a nice orderly fashion. I prefer to do it in a timeline, and I'll be the first to admit, though, that I'm not good with timelines. When I try to make a timeline, many times the first attempt ends up just being a bunch of mush. So you can either do it as a timeline or you can do it just basically as a story. And you fit in your times and you say, okay, the first thing that happened was on this evening there was a talk by the young ladies to go out that night to the bar and have some drinks. And you go through the entire, they went here, they got the ride home from the driver who had gone back and forth. Was he an Uber driver? Was he not? The last I've heard as of December 24th was not only was he an Uber driver, but he's come forward and had very little to say. Other than there was nothing going on in the cab that made him think that the women were scared, apprehensive, in the belief that they were in any sort of danger. And you put that in, you fill in, of course, the the part that all of us are wondering, what does that mean? And where one of them says, "What did you say to Adam?" And the other one says, I told Adam everything. Okay, well, that's probably meaningful that you would have that conversation the night that well, it wasn't quite the night, was it? Is it the same night they were killed, or did you go past midnight? Was that before midnight? Anyway, but within hours of your life being taken by a homicidal maniac, you would have that conversation. The detectives who are looking into this case believe that Adam was the bartender, and that would make sense in a time that would be just either a half hour, an hour before they just exited the club. And that's how the story comes together. There's something about Adam and the secret. And this has to be the worst kept secret in the history of the world. If you look at the pictures of these two young ladies, they are always with their hands on each other. So I'm not in a position to make any factual allegations. I don't sleep with either of these people. But it looks like, to those of us who just walked in off the street, it looks like those two are a couple. And if they are a couple, which it sure looks like they are, I can't find a photograph of both of them in it, a recent photograph, where they are not physically touching each other and hugging each other. And nobody on TV will mention, I think they might have been romantically involved. Well, is that a notion we should look into? We don't have the facilities to look into it. But on the other hand, if somebody has either audio or videotape of one of the two of them explaining that is the case, that would very much help us determine a motive for the killings. And all of you know that the motive here is what gobsmacks us. We just look around and say, who in the world, why would anybody ever want to do this? Well, there's a very clear answer to that. So we make our story or our timeline, whichever one it is, we make it as complete as possible. We have to do a little bit of a judgment call of throwing things out, like the reason for the stopping of the young men on Banfield. And it's so funny to watch Ashley Banfield try and discuss Banfield, where the men were stopped, and get it right without tripping up on her own name. But anyway, she's very famous in the history of journalism for being just really bad. And one of her classic blunders haunts her to this day, and she made it 20 years ago. As the war in Iraq, I think it was version 2 was starting, she said, "This is Ashley Banfield, Ashley Banfield on location in Baghdad." And some experts had to tell her that journalists don't say that. Actresses say that. Journalists say, "This is Ashley Banfield on assignment in Baghdad." That's what reporters say, on assignment in Baghdad. On location is where you are, if you're an actress and you have the food trailer and maybe your own trailer. So that gaffe has haunted her to this day. Let's get back to we're making a story or a timeline of the incident, okay? And you can do that basically to your own liking. Don't include whatever you want. But when you're done, we look at it. Okay? Maybe read it or scan it 4 or 5 times. What do? We look for, is there anything that's missing that we would expect to be there? Is there anything that if we look at it and we say, wait a minute, if I were one of these people, and you go through and play the role of any one of them, I would have by now come forward and done this. Okay? Let me give you a few possible examples, and I think it's better if you come up with your own, but there are some that are so obvious that not talking about it is bizarre. Why is the person who drove the white car not coming forward? Everybody in the entire country of the United States knows that person is being looked for an explanation as to why was your car, and as of the 24th, it looks like the car was at Jack, the boyfriend's house, earlier in the evening. Why was it seen rushing down the street behind the 3 boys who were being arrested in Banfield? Why is it on the gas station security cam? It sees the car go running by very early in the morning, right about 3 o'clock, headed towards the freeway, apparently. And no one has ever found that car or the driver. Where's Waldo says that person would have come forward if there was nothing up. And so that person is therefore the number one suspect, the person who is driving that car. Now, some people say, well, it doesn't help us find who is driving the car. No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. But it helps us prioritize the evidence, what's important and what's not. And what is crucial at this point for solving that crime is finding out who drove that car. And again, I know I just said this, but the reason for that is anybody in the world, in the country, in the United States, if it was you who drove that car that night, you would have come forward by now if you didn't do the killings. You would have gone to the police and say, hey, I just want you to know I'm the driver of that white car. I had nothing to do with the murders. But now, if you were really sharp, and I want to make sure, this is if you had nothing to do with the killings. You would have an attorney go with you, and you'd show up at the police station, and you'd say, it was me, and here's my ownership and registration of the car, and here's my explanation as to why I was there. Here's my explanation as to why I have not come forward until this time, and that's it. That where's Waldo technique of what is missing, what is not here, will 99 times out of 100 get you to the murderer. Now, in this case, I guess I call it a case, in the killing of the 4 young people in Moscow, Idaho, there is, unbelievably, a second huge Where's Waldo. Just huge, staring us all in the face. And absolutely nobody is talking about it. Not Ashley Banfield, not Chris Donahue, the guy who walks down the street and while he's walking he adjusts his mouth like, oh, I think my mouth isn't working right. Those people are dopes. They have nothing to say. They put on a 1-hour show with nothing to say except 58 minutes of waivers. Please don't sue me. Don't sue me. I don't know anything. I'm not a police officer. Now that goes for this podcast as well. Nothing I'm saying here is a factual allegation. I don't know who did what. I'm only trying to give a possible scenario as to a working tactic that I've seen help people find out who the victim or who the culprit is in criminal cases. But no, I'm not making any accusations against the person who owns the white car. But I am saying that if you use my tool, it does point to the person of the white car, and the more time that goes by that person does not come forward and identify themselves and say, hi, I'm Hank Williams, Jr., and I was driving that white car that night, and I just don't want to be involved with all this. Okay, then that takes them out of the focus. Remember that there's always the possibility with police investigations that the police know who it is and are just jiving us, saying they don't know, they wish they could find out. That's their way of finding the bad guy, because it's very possible they know. With the FBI involved, they very, very, very possibly have made out something on the car that allowed them to find out who it was. I do have the same understanding that says that there was no license plate. Okay, that's going to make it really tough. You know, there's one thing I want to say for you people out there who love to watch these crime shows and stuff and the interview show. Many people are saying, well, why doesn't the FBI take over? The FBI doesn't take over. That's not, from 30 years of defending criminal cases, only a few of which the FBI was involved in, I'd say less than 10. The FBI doesn't take over. They come in and they join up with the local police agency and they work together on the case. On TV, that's not the way it happens on these criminal shows like CSI. FBI is here, you guys get out. Okay, that's for dramatic effect. That does not ever happen in real life. The FBI show up and they say, hey, good to have you. Can we use your lab? Yeah, okay, great. And they work together on solving the case. So that's not real. So let's get back into the Where's Waldo? Now, I believe this is unusual. There is a second blinking Where's Waldo in the murder of the 4 young Moscow, Idaho students. What is that? Okay, and the answer is, why have none of us, not you, not me, not her, not him, why have none of us heard from Jack the boyfriend? Why isn't there video of him coming forward the next day and saying, I just want to introduce myself, I'm Jack the boyfriend, and I would never do anything to harm my girlfriend even though she's leaving me, and worse yet, she's leaving me because she's decided that she likes women better than she liked me. She's going now with somebody who doesn't even have one. That's what I heard somebody say once, whose wife left him for another woman. She's leaving me for someone who doesn't even have one. So that's the problem that we have here, is we've got poor Jack, whose love is leaving, and we don't have any interviews with him at all. Not one word. Now, what goes with that, what adds to that, is that horrible, cringeworthy memorial ceremony where the family starts to speak and Jack comes right on stage, and for some reason he's changed his appearance. Why did you do that? And as he does, the family looks up and says, holy fuck, not this idiot. And they try and hug him away, and that doesn't work, and they just leave. They just say, we're not having anything to do with this guy. Which means the family knows it's him. The family of the girls knows that it's him already. How do they know? I don't know. I believe they probably have heard before that he has a fixation with knives. Many experts say that this killer in this case is fixated with knives. So when they find somebody who has a collection of knives and likes to go on about how this knife is great for killing and this one's not, that's your murderer. So that's how we're going to use the Where's Waldo. We're going to say, ordinarily, if you were the boyfriend of one of the women, you would have come forward now and spoken on TV, or to the press, or to the police. You'd give them a big statement, and you'd have one of those, which we don't have here. I don't know why that is, but in England they have all these meetings with the video conferences with the person who's bereaved and the police, and they make a plea. Please, if you know anything, come forward. Help us find whoever did this to Maddie and Craddy and Addie and all the three witches, and because help us find who did it, because the family. No, it doesn't help the family if you find out who did it. It just helps the police clear their record. That's what they want. So why do we have nothing? As a matter of fact, what's really interesting, and I used to point this out about Henry Kissinger for the first 2 years, he was the assistant to Richard Nixon. We've never even heard the guy speak. Not Henry Kissinger, which we hadn't heard him speak either. We have never heard Jack, the boyfriend, speak. What is that? Okay, that's your second Where's Waldo. Now, some people would say, well, Glenn, that means that your system doesn't work, because now you have one pointing there and one pointing there, so what good is it? That's not true at all. Very possibly the system is pointing at the same person. The same person who was driving the white car is the same person who's not speaking to the press. Now, I want to make sure, we want to avoid all lawsuits. I am not claiming to have any knowledge that any Jack did it. Matter of fact, I don't have any knowledge of who did it at all. So don't bother suing me. The fact that I used to be a lawyer, but I'm not anymore, I retired, it does not mean this is legal advice. Do not take any legal advice from a podcast. And if you are feeling angry at Jack, just remember that these are just speculations, and you do not want to be accusing Jack of something because he may not have done it. Now, there is actually Banfield. No, there's actually a third missing problem or issue that really makes me suspicious. And I believe this one is almost never wrong. I saw one on 48 Hours where it was wrong, but there's the issue of tears. Tears are hard to fake. Now, some people can. And of course, there's that great video, creepy video, of Paloma Faith doing her song Cry Baby on the Banff Awards, and she has a stage full of men. They're obviously hypnotized, is what it is. But she has men who come out, and on key or on whatever, they can start to cry. And while she sings the song Cry Baby, these grown men, about 30 of them, big muscle builders, just start crying. Well, she may have that, but in real life, it's very difficult to do. So, if you see a suspect and they are supposedly crying, I miss my girlfriend so much, I can't. But you look and there's no tears coming out of their eyes. They're faking it. They don't. That's the killer. That's the killer. Okay? So, has anybody here seen any tears or any sense of loss from anybody? I've seen it from the family at the memorial ceremony. They came up and they were as sad as could be. But has anybody seen any tears? I mean, water-like tears coming out of the eyes of Jack? Jack, the boyfriend. No, I haven't either. Why not? Jack, where are your tears? What's going on with you? Why are there no tears? Very strange. Some people like to point out that is, I mean, many criminals have been caught that way, but that was the way that from the very beginning, the police knew Susan Smith had killed her two little boys. She came to the police station crying about the boys and how they'd been taken by a black man who drove them away in a car and blah, blah, blah. And she expected the police to believe that, but the police, of course, noticed that as she cried and cried about the loss of her two little boys, there were no tears. No water coming out of those eyes. And so they knew she was faking the crying, and she was not sad to see her boys go, and that meant she was the murderer, which of course she was. Very, very sad case, if you remember it, from about 20 years ago. Very, very sad case. And it's funny, that's the Where's Waldo method of what's missing, tears. No tears, showed her to clearly be the murderer. But a friend of mine who, this was, I believe, in North Carolina, a friend of mine from North Carolina, a very good friend, said very wisely, he said, a black man driving around with two white kids in the back seat does not go unnoticed in North Carolina. And I thought, that's a great point, too. She's sitting there saying that he got away, a black man driving two little white boys in the back seat. Come on. Within a mile, somebody would call the police in North Carolina. So that's true. Anyway, with that, tonight's Where's Waldo? I hope you might have gotten a tool that will help you solve some crimes that you have not been able to figure out. You want to look for what's missing that would obviously be there, that under any normal circumstances you would expect to see it. Something that is, in other criminal cases, always there, like a statement from the bereaved boyfriend or girlfriend saying, my heart is broken, I miss my sweetie so much, I can't live without her. And you look for those real tears, not crying noises. Anybody can do crying noises. You look for real tears. And that's how you find out who it is that is really bereaved and bereft and not somebody who's putting on a show. You don't have to call the police and let them know, hey, that person's faking it. There's no tears. The police know this and don't tip them off in advance that they're aware of that. And they just let them come in and give a bogus performance saying how hurt they are. Also, some people might say, you know what, there is another way to arrive here at the same conclusion. That's always bad for the murderer. And that is, they said, well, when it comes to motive, who would have a motive to do this? Well, that really does not solve it. At first that looks like, oh boy, that's just going to shine light on this thing. Because the only person who could have a motive would be Jack. And his motive is that his girlfriend is leaving. His girlfriend of, I think, 5 or 6 years. Holy cow, that has got to hurt like hell. And she's not only leaving, but she's leaving because her roommate and she are now a lesbian couple. Well, if that were you and you're a guy, you would have a lot of anger. And you would say, boy, do I look like a fool in front of the entire fucking world. And I'm not going to sit here every night and see, them walk by outside hugging each other and kissing each other. And they don't say that they're a couple, but geez, they're super friendly. So you can look at it from that way. You can say the motive brings, or the motive only brings to forbearance to the motive only brings forward Jack. He's the only one who would be hurt by the fact that those two people are clearly a happy couple. No, I don't know that for a fact. I'm not saying it's a fact, but in my opinion, that's what my eyes see. But remember, there's also the possibility, I do have to at least, let's be fair to Jack. There's a possibility that it is just a very angry psychopath. And I saw a photo that boy, they're lucky they didn't get an angry psychopath sooner. One of the women, I don't know their names, they're all the same. One of the women was selling some merchandise in Craigslist or somewhere on social media. And so she took a picture of her, or somebody took a picture of she and her goods for sale. And there's this and that and this and that. And she's sitting there and she is in the sexiest pose, like, you want to have some fun? She's in a sexy pose, wearing sexy clothes, that rhymes, and she's part of the picture. Why would you be part of the picture? If you were selling stuff on the interwebs, why would you put your picture in the picture of what you have for sale, especially a picture going to strangers and you in an alluring pose? Why would anybody do such a stupid thing? Very stupid. And it is possible, it's sad that it's possible, but it is possible that just some psychopath got angry at her and looked at her and came up with she thinks she's just the hottest thing in the world. Doesn't she just think her shit doesn't stink? And got angry and angry and angry. And really what he's angry at is that he can't have her. She is just of such a quality of beauty that he will never have a chance to have anything that beautiful in his existence on the planet. And so he gets angrier and angrier and more resentful every day he looks at the photo. And finally, because he is a nut job, or a lunatic, this person, he decides that he's going to go wipe her off the planet for her publicly shaming him and showing, look at what I've got in the way of beauty and you can't have it. And so that's why he went there to do what he did. He got directions there so he could look at the things that are for sale. It's possible that the address is in the ad. And he said, I'll wipe this bitch off who thinks she's better than everybody else and too good for me, which she was. And that's the other secondary possibility as to who did it. I would say there is some possibility there. All right, that's the end of the world podcast. I know it's been a year and a half since there was a previous version, but once I got the world talking, or once the world got talking, I didn't get them, about, there's a disease coming in, it's called COVID, and it's going to end the world, or at least end the world as we know it, which it is. And there was no need for my podcast. What did you need? Me to tell you that COVID's coming? You needed it when I was doing the podcast. So that's January and December, before COVID was here, and I was telling everybody the end of the world is fucking coming. The world will not be the same after COVID gets here. You know what? On that, just a closing word on COVID. The new strain, which again is not a completely new, never seen before, but it is a variant of the Omicron virus. So it's just an Omicron 7. It is out in China, and the R0 figure on it, I'll explain what that is 18. And nobody's ever seen 18 except Alice Cooper. And it's unbelievable. There are many people who thought, well, an R naught of 18 is impossible. The R naught is the number of people that you can predict, the number of people that will likely get infected from a person who is already infected with this disease. If the R naught is 3, that means that for each person who gets the disease, they're probably going to light up 3 more people. That's bad. That means on Monday, the first person gets it. On Tuesday, now 4 people have it. The first one and an extra 3. The next day, now you've got 4 people have it. The next day, you've got 4 people times 3, so you've got 12 people on Wednesday. On Thursday, you've got 36 people. On Friday, you've got 108 people. On Saturday, you've got 356 people. And on Sunday, you've got 1,200 something. 1,200 people. That's in the first week. Can you guess what happens in the second week? It just gets out of hand. Now that's with an R naught of 3. What is an R naught of 18? And that is what the Chinese authorities, the doctors there, say this horribly contagious disease has. It has an R naught of 18. So that means if the first person gets it on Monday, that's 1. The next day there are 19 people. Okay. Next day there's about 380 people. That's pretty bad. Let's say 400. The next day, there's 400 times 18 is 7,200, something like that. The next day is 7,000, would be 140,000 people in 5 days. The next day would be 140, 280, would be 2 million people by Friday, that is, I think. Did I lose my place? Yeah. So next there'd be 2 million people, and the next there would be 40 million people, and by the next day there would be 800 million people. So the entire, with 2 weeks, well, it takes a little longer than a week to come down with it, about 3 days to 5 days. So, but in a month, everyone in China will have it. And believe it or not, even though it's not on the news, that's happening. That is happening now. In China, so let's say in Beijing and in Shanghai, 50% of the population are positive for the new COVID. It doesn't mean they are all sick, but many of them are. Luckily, and God damn, this is lucky, it's staying up in their throats, it's not moving into their lungs. So they're not having to put people on lung machines, and many of them they don't even have to hospitalize. They just go home. The Chinese are also doing something that's absolutely horrendous. It's unbelievable. They have these testing spots that you have to go to if you live there, and they have their people lie. And the people who work there are told to lie, and when somebody tests positive, tell them, you're negative, you're good. Oh, congratulations, you're good. No. So that's what they're doing. But the truth of the matter is that China is just completely full of Omicron virus. It's only a matter of a day or two before it's here. It will be here definitely by New Year's Eve. I mean, you can't avoid it. There's people coming on planes from China to here. And when it gets here, we will just have another, just like you remember when COVID started here and it was crazy and there was a lockdown and we'll have another one of those in either January or February. That's why I'm in my house and I ain't going nowhere. I didn't even answer the door when the mail person came today. All right, have a good time. I do have another topic that I'm going to be addressing, but please give this method, the Where's Waldo method. What's missing in this scene? What's not here that would be here if things were normal? Use it to solve any crimes that you're interested in looking at or anything else, and I will talk to you soon.